Under the Mats Radio with another exclusive Skype interview. This is your host, Tech, here. Today's date is August 21st, 2024. Of course, the time you'll be watching this, fans, this will not be the date. Time is 5:33 p.m. Eastern Time, but for our guests, I believe it is 4:33 p.m. Central. Am I correct?
3:33. I'm on Mountain Time.
3:33 Mountain Time. So he's a little behind us. We got him here. We're here with another exclusive Skype interview for Under the Mats Radio. We're bringing in a very special guest. This man has been a supporter of mine and my show since day zero, 12 years ago. He was the first person to answer my interview and the first person to ever publish my show on his website, which he is the founder, former president of WrestlingInc.com that is still running strong. He is a dog lover. He runs Indian dating apps. He also does a lot of things with money, which I'm sure he'll talk about. And we see his very precious dog in the background who looks adorable. Not sure the name yet, but we'll get it. We're bringing it right now. As you've seen his face on the Wrestling Inc. podcast, on the Wrestling Inc. review shows on YouTube, but you may not see him as much as he kind of gave up his throne a little bit and decided to chill. But we all know his name, the man himself, Raj Giri. Welcome to Under the Mat Radio.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. That was quite the intro. Although I got one correction. I haven't done any Indian dating apps in a long time. That was like 14 years ago.
14 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So, no problem. Shout out to your precious dog. We have
Thank you, Lexi.
Lexi. Hey, Lexi. What kind of dog is she?
She's like a mini golden doodle, basically. They're called Cobber dogs is the name of the breed, but they're similar to that.
We love dogs. We have a dog. Shout out to Mesa. Mesa is a wishy babe Maltese, Yorkie mix. My daughter just left, so she could have told us. But she's lovable, a little feisty at times, but you know how it is.
Yeah. No, they're great. And we just watched this Netflix special. There's this Netflix documentary about it's called In the Mind of Dogs or something like that. And if you haven't seen it, I'd say check it out. It just makes you feel that much closer to your dog too.
Sure. I always loved. I didn't grow up with pets, but
I
grew around a lot of people who had dogs, and all my sisters have cats. We love cat lovers, but something about dogs, man's best friend.
Yeah, Lexi's the first pet I've had, other than we've had fish, which those don't really.
Yeah,
those are very different.
Don't count fish.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's been amazing. It's been 7 years, and it's been awesome.
Lovely. So, speaking of dogs, what is your favorite dog in a movie of all time?
My favorite dog in a movie. That's a tough one. Have you seen what's the one where the dog keeps reincarnating? Dog's Life, maybe.
I think it is. The dog keep reincarnating over and over again.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of dogs in that, so it's gosh, man, you got me on that. I'm not sure.
I know it won't be Cujo. I know it that much.
No, not Cujo.
What about the Sandlot dog?
Never saw the Sandlot.
You never watched the Sandlot?
No, that's an 80s movie, right?
Yeah, it is the 80s, yes.
I'm way behind on my 80s movies, so I'm trying to get caught up. We do this podcast called Gigantic Pop with Matt Morgan and Glenn Rubenstein and myself, and we'll talk about old movies a lot. And there's just a ton of 80s stuff that I'm just now getting caught up on. Like I just recently saw Bloodsport. I still haven't seen Running Man or Predator, so
man,
yeah, I need to get caught up.
Well, I'm sure. Shout out to Rubenstein and Matt Morgan. Love those guys. I'm sure Rubenstein has been grilling you hard for not watching The Sandlot, as we know how he does.
Yeah.
And I will let we just had Paul Hertzog, who's the composer of Bloodsport and Kickboxer and The Last Kumite. He just was on our show. I just spoke to him a few weeks ago. He just had successful heart surgery. So we'll let him know that you finally watched the movie he composed.
Very cool. Yeah.
And I'll let you know how that goes. I'm sure he'll like your thoughts.
That background music was awesome in
Oh
that
yeah,
movie. Yeah.
yeah, definitely one of the best top 10 soundtracks of all time. So let's get to this. You started WrestlingInc.com.
Hmm.
Now, what was your inspiration to starting a website for wrestling? And not only that, because as you like me, 40s plus, we've been fans since we were kids, and we knew how things were with the publications and the magazines and the almanacs. Let us know what inspired you to start Wrestling Inc. and what you had to do to set it apart from all the other wrestling websites.
Yeah, this was back in 96. I was in engineering school, engineering college, and I hated what I was doing. So I was like, I can't be an engineer full time. I was chemical engineering, it just wasn't me. I wasn't cut out for it. And so at college, I was like, well, there's this internet stuff that's growing. So one weekend, my wife was out of town. My then girlfriend, now wife, was out of town. And I was like, I'm not going to go out and party. I'm just going to stay in and learn how to make a website. And I needed a topic, and that was it. I picked wrestling just because I'd been a fan forever. There was no other topic that like I watched football here and there, but I couldn't name more than 5 to 7 players on a team. So that wrestling was the one thing I knew really well. But back then I never wanted to be a journalist or anything like that. But um, I, I thought it'd be cool to just make a wrestling site, just giving my opinions on where I saw certain angles going. And, I could kind of predict where a lot of stuff was heading, and I was getting a lot of those predictions right. And so people just kind of uh, kept coming, and that the traffic kept growing and growing. And then I started getting interviews and everything. And then it kind of got the Wrestling Inc. domain, and it went from there. So it started very organically. It was never meant to be a big thing. It was just a way to learn how to make a website.
And some of the best things in life happen organically. You don't think
Yeah.
about it. We're both
Hmm.
married. Did you think about, oh, the morning you met your wife, oh, I'm gonna find my wife today? You didn't know. When you saw it,
Oh,
you probably
yeah.
knew. The ice cream cone was a mistake. A bunch of other stuff
Yeah.
was just, oh, this happened. Shit, it happens. That's how it
Yeah.
is. That's how it is sometimes.
Never thought it would be a business. I never thought I'd make money off of it. I never thought anything like that. So yeah.
It's true. Now, with both of us being minorities,
Hmm.
did you deal with any challenges of you having your background getting into the world of pro wrestling and being in journalism and owning a website and getting coverage with the boys and whatnot?
No, not really. Not really at all. I've never experienced anything like that from people in the industry. They've always been really fair, um, and I do want to say I've never wanted to be a journalist. I never called myself a journalist. That's not my thing. My thing was always to create an outlet to hire journalists, and but when I do break news, I always do follow journalistic patterns and steps. Double sourcing and things like that, and making
Right.
sure it's accurate. And if I ever get anything wrong, issuing an apology. But I never wanted to be a journalist. But yeah, man, everyone's was always really cool. I mean, if I ever had someone who's kind of an asshole during an interview, it's usually someone who was known to be an asshole anyway,
Right.
So, um, yeah. So no,
That's
not
great.
really.
That's great to hear. You. What are your thoughts now? We'll go backwards with more questions, but currently the business changes. Everything changes. When you
Mhm.
started Wrestling Inc. to where it is now with is we know with technology and there's so many websites. We're not going to name them because we don't support them. I've always supported you from day one. All these other websites, and then I'm sure you're like me. Certain terms are like a full letter word. The dirt sheets. What's your thoughts on that business now compared to how it was when you started?
I mean, it's different. It's very different. I mean, even now you're starting to see just technology as it just changes so much over time. Back when I started, no one was checking their phones for wrestling news, right? And you had to go on your desktop, and I used to like love designing sites back then, because you're designing for a full desktop, so you could do cool stuff. And then that once it moved to cell phones, everyone kind of has the same kind of layout. It's your little header on top and whatnot.
scroll.
But yeah, so yeah, it's just constantly changing. Even now, I feel like you're starting to see less and less momentum going to websites and more going to social media and people posting, quick recaps of stuff on websites on Twitter, and not always giving these websites their credit, or so it's just always changing. It just feels like the attention spans are coming less and less, and so people are wanting their news quicker. They're not looking to read a whole article anymore, and so yeah, it's just changed.
Definitely is. Now, something I'm sure you probably never been asked before, but we both over the years do the same thing, as we're the interviewers.
Mm-hmm.
Is you know how it is of setting yourself apart, ourselves apart. You hear the same dumbass questions and the same methodical, setup as we see with the media scrums or other interviews, whether it be with wrestling or sports, the NFL, ESPN. What process did you take to set yourself apart, asking the boys questions?
Yeah, I try to. A lot of times, I'll just look at what like a common question is being asked, and just kind of like, well, is there something interesting out of that question? So the same question that everyone's asking, and seeing if there's again, something interesting out of it. Like right now, I'm surprised that no one's asked Nick Khan this. But I've seen interviews with Nick Khan this past year about the WWE Netflix deal, and I don't think anyone's asked him once, like, why is Raw staying 3 hours if it is staying 3 hours? Is it definitely staying on Monday nights? We know now that it is, but back then he wasn't being asked that.
Right.
For people that have the paid version of Netflix where you don't get ads, will they get like what you see on Peacock, where you get the WWE promo videos during ad breaks, or are they still going to get ads, or will they get no ads at all? Why is SmackDown staying on Fridays when that's usually not the best night, as far as the demos, and what was the decision-making process behind that? Just stuff like that, where people are asking about Netflix, of course, but not these other questions that are, yeah. And before it was announced that, that Raw would be staying on USA, asking him, like, what is happening during those 3 months between the deal expiring and going on Netflix? And I don't think they were. I think they were asked that on a conference call once, and they just kind of scurried around the answer. But just kind of stuff that's not really asked, that should be kind of more ingrained, I guess.
It's obvious, but it's not. You gotta kind of dig a little bit. So okay, well, it's Netflix, but think about the time.
Right.
Just 3-month gap. What we're going to do? We're going to see these weird ad commercials and promo videos, or is it going to be going to Peacock for a bit? So
yeah, I was surprised with Triple H in his last media scrum. No one asked him about Shane McMahon. That seemed like a really easy question. And then from there, just asking about Shane McMahon when he showed up at WrestleMania last year. Was that supposed to be a one-off? Were there more plans for him? Just kind of getting more into that.
Yeah. And we know Trips would have deflected the question with Shane, but at least ask him. Even if he said, well, Shane's doing well, or the political answer, he's doing well, I'm proud of him, he's free to do what he wants. Similar when he asked Vince at the media scrum right after the scandal, when he said, well, we're just going to focus on the positive notes. Like
that's where you have that follow-up on if there were plans for him after WrestleMania last year, which is not a controversial topic that he could probably give an answer to. And so you kind of frame the question with both in there. So it's 2 questions in one, but at least even if you're not getting a real answer for the first one, maybe he'll provide some details that we didn't know about with the second one, because we don't really know what the plans were with Shane with WrestleMania last year. Was that supposed to be was he supposed to be part of the storyline? Was that just a surprise appearance and a one and done? So,
definitely interesting. Only they know, and only Shane knows.
Yeah.
Wrestling almanacs. I'm taking you way back in the day because I know you like history. Your memories of wrestling almanacs and you smiling.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Have you ever owned them?
Wrestling almanacs. I have the PWI almanac. Um, I forget what year it was. I mean, it's probably like 20 years old now. But yeah, that's about it.
And anyone listening that may not be old enough to understand this, and not just saying by physical age, just by wrestling knowledge, we had almanacs back in the day. It was these thick books that was kind of grady with this paper, and it used to give you like all the details of every pay per view of that year or the yearly ones and who won and different. I found my 95-96 almanac that my mom purchased me 2 months ago. Of course, it was no good; it was all ripped up, but it gave me the memory of back in the day when you went and looked at the almanacs of the wrestling books, and which is the next question of your favorite pro wrestling magazine. Is it Pro Wrestling World? Is it Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Wrestling Review? There's so many back then.
Growing up, it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated by far. That felt like the A
The
show of the
GOAT.
magazines. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd buy any one that was on the stands, but Pro Wrestling Illustrated, that's the one I'd get excited for when there was a new one out.
It was for us because I live in Baltimore. Is we had Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Shout out to our friend Bill After, love him to death. And then we had Pro Wrestling USA, which I still have a copy here at the house. Those were the only two that we saw. Then later was like the Wrestler, but we only got those three magazines. We didn't get all of the magazines that some people did in the other territories, where they had like
Yeah.
5, 6, 10.
There were a bunch. There were a few that were all owned by the Pro Wrestling Illustrated company, the Aftermag. So like the Wrestler was one.
Yes.
There were some others, but yeah. And then there was one magazine that would be like huge, like big.
The big
It was
11 by 17, like the real big.
yeah. That one was really cool, just with the layout and everything.
Was that the one that had the poster sometimes? Where if you got certain ones, they had like the layout poster where you could like clip like a wrestler or tag team.
Oh, I don't remember that. I know WWF would have those because I used to have some hanging up in my room from those magazines. But yeah.
WWF had it, and it was another. Well, I don't know if it's the big one or if it was Pro Wrestling USA. I'll text you a picture later of one of the magazines. Like each month or every quarter, you get like a layout of like a wrestler. It could be like Sting, the Road Warriors, Hulk Hogan, Bob Backlund. It'd be like full color, but everything else was like black and white.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha.
So I know we showing our age in wrestling is.
Hey, man.
Like, hey,
stuff back then was the best.
It was. The cover photos, the covers,
yeah,
the hotlines, what have you. Definitely fun. So let me flip around. You started the website, you're doing well. But as you being a wrestling fan as a kid, as a little Raj, we know you love Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
Is he your GOAT of all time?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Number
Especially
one.
late 80s, early 90s Macho Man. Yeah, absolutely.
Now I'm asking this with Macho Man. What is your favorite Macho Man Randy Savage attire?
The late 80s stuff, like his WrestleMania 4 gear, like that he wore back and forth. He had that one like white and blue robe that he'd wear, and that Elizabeth was like matched with him. Is a lot of the stuff he wore then, but like that white and blue robe. And I've been like trying to find one of those old school Macho Man capes and headbands, and they're hard to come by.
Now, were you a fan of Macho Man when he wore the tights or the long pants?
I mean, both, but the tights was my favorite. 87 to like until he became the Macho King. That was my favorite.
Besides WrestleMania 4, Hogan against the Mega Powers Explode, Hogan against Savage. Besides WrestleMania, besides WrestleMania 3, Savage against Steamboat. What is your favorite two Macho Man Randy Savage matches?
Hogan Warrior was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This one isn't so much because of Macho Man, but the Outsiders versus WCW, where Hogan turned, just from the historical standpoint. I've seen that.
96.
Yeah, Bash of the Beach. Macho against DDP, because I thought that was such a way to create a new star. He really made DDP that night and really, put him over.
You talk about the first one, Spring Stampede, or you mean the trilogy in general?
The first one. The first one.
Spring Stampede.
Yeah. And he had some others in there, like with British Bulldog at one of the King of the Rings. I believe it was Dave. I can't remember if it was Dynamite Kid or Davey. But he had a lot of cool matches in. I always liked that he always stayed a heel, and when he was a heel, and he was just awesome.
Something I spoke with, I can't remember who I just was speaking with the last interview we did, and I mentioned how Scott Hudson, and we talked about Macho Man, and if you notice about when he went against Flair, Flair always had the cutoff, but the favorite cutoff that Flair mainly only did with Savages, he will always kill Savage with the back elbow. There will be always a cutoff spot. So if you go back and watch any Savage match with Flair, WWF, WCW, whenever, he getting the shine on Flair will always stop with the back elbow. And Savage will always sell, because Savage never sold flat on his back. He always kind of side in his liver was red. Yeah. And that was something and he will always think with his arm, which is the greatness of Macho Man.
I'll have to check that out. And by the way, that WrestleMania 8 match is up there too. His match with Flair is up there with one of my favorites.
Would you say that's their best match, or would you say it's one of the most notable ones?
I thought so. For me, the best is not just moves, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's the emotion. It's like Hulk versus Andre at Shea Stadium might have been a better match, but the one at WrestleMania 3 is one that I've seen over and over and over. So because of that, I thought the WrestleMania 8 match was the best, and I was really wanting Macho to win. And the fact when it came on in the middle of the show, I was like, oh gosh, he's not going to win. So yeah, that one would definitely. I thought it was their best.
I'm gonna quiz you real quick before we go to another one. Super Brawl 6 cage match, Flair against Savage. How did Randy Savage lose?
That wasn't where Elizabeth turned on him, was it?
It was.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Some of the WCW pay-per-views, once they started going monthly, it's not as clear in my mind. Like I could tell you WrestleMania is like 1 to 17. I could, or 1 to 20, basically. I could tell you all the main events, and then after that, it's just kind of.
I'm the same way.
Kind of a fog.
I can go from WrestleMania 1 to 23. After that, I go blank until we get to 30, and then I start, And the only reason why I remember 6 standing out because Super Brawl 5 was here in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why I can separate 5 and 6 because it start. And something falls foreign objects, if you don't see much, that's when they introduced the Spike Heel.
Yeah.
The high heel shoe. Which is obvious. I mean, my wife probably.
Arn Anderson beat Hogan with that spiked heel.
My wife doesn't notice, but I actually used to use it as a foreign object when we background wrestled. Was the little? I took my mom high heel shoe.
I remember WWF would use that in one of the Billionaire Ted skits.
Yeah, Billionaire Ted skit. Yeah, definitely so. So let's talk about now. As far as movies, so people can get understanding about you. You know you love wrestling. We'll get to wrestling in a second. Is Naked Gun 2.5 better than Naked Gun Part 1?
I've got to rewatch it. I remember loving them both. I've seen Naked Gun 1 so many times that I know it front to back. And, I just watched it recently with my daughters. And it's still hilarious to me. My daughters, they found it funny, but not near as funny as I did. I got to rewatch 2.5, but I just remember I loved the ending. I loved him unplugging the bomb. So right now, I'd still have to say 1 is better.
Do you remember 33 and the Third, Part 3?
Yeah, that one was. Yeah. I think I only watched that one once.
Is that the one with the Oscar where the person died on the Oscar stage? Or was that Part 2? It was one of them where the person had the stroke or something on the stage, and the 333 was kind of, how it was.
Yeah, it was. They were trying too hard. to be to live up to the others.
Speaking of movies, wrestling movies,
Mm-hmm.
what is the worst wrestling movie in your opinion of all time? And you cannot say Suburban Commando.
So wrestlers that, because there's a lot of bad ones that went straight to DVD, or so if we're talking about theatrical, gosh, and you can't say Suburban Commando.
No.
Ready to Rumble was really bad.
That
was when I couldn't even, and that was when I was becoming a huge fan again, and that came out, and I was like, oh god, this was just god awful.
And No Holds Barred.
No Holds Barred had its charm though for that time. It's really bad. It's one that I would not show anyone, like show any of my friends. But man, I watched that movie probably like 6-7 times. I ordered that pay-per-view when they did the match, the movie.
Yep. Wasn't it SummerSlam, right? Was it SummerSlam, the tag team, wasn't it? The No Holds Barred and SummerSlam.
So they did the rematch during Christmas time. Yeah, they did the first match at SummerSlam. Then they had Zeus destroy Hogan at Survivor Series. That led to the match, the movie, which was brilliant. The fact that they just taped one match at a house show and they charged $20 for it. But
great promote. No one does marketing better than WWE. You're not going to. You can say what you want about Vince, but that's something that Vince has always been a genius at. Even now with everything that they do, no one beats that. The only time we seen Hulk Hogan in blue. Think about it, because it was was a Rip 'em. Rip was the Rip 'em. Rip 'em in there.
Is it Rip Rogers? Because there is a Rip Rogers wrestlers.
We know Rip. Shout out to Rip.
Yeah, but I want to say his name was Rip Rogers in that movie.
I think it was. It was. I'll have my statistician look it up now.
All right.
Here we go. Hot take. 2 unpopular opinions that you have on the state of pro wrestling. It could be overrated wrestler, overrated match, overrated event, overrated thought. 2 hot takes right now. Because you do them a lot on your show. I know how you do. You like me. You honest, so.
Gosh. I think Gunther as a draw is overrated right now, but I think he's getting there. You see him every week, he's getting bigger and bigger. So he's getting there. But as a top level draw, I think he's a little overrated. Because when you think of like the biggest matches at WrestleMania right now, Gunther is not in my mix, but he can get there, and they're doing a great job building him. But that's when I would put, and kind of similar on the AEW side, the Young Bucks are not draws.
Now Gunther, I could see. Gunther's great. He's growing. He's so old school. Like, if he was in the 80s, like the early mid 80s, like NWA, Mid-South, Continental, he would have been one of the biggest. Now, as you said, you're right. It's taking time.
And he can still get there. I thought the same with Damian Priest. That, after he won the title at WrestleMania, I felt like his title reign was just it was lackluster. And then he got hot, and then he lost the title, and now he feels bigger than ever. Ever since losing the title, like his reactions on Raw, being out of the Judgment Day, being a babyface, he feels hot. So, Gunther, unless he says something controversial, his promos when he's by himself are not always clicking. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. He doesn't always get that gigantic heat unless, if it's a hot crowd, everyone's getting, big ovations. But again, like I said, I'm seeing that growth. I'm seeing him getting there. So I could definitely see him getting there.
You just never know, because with Damian, and I remember he was met him a few times, Punishment Martinez, Ring of Honor, and always humble, great guy. And like you said, when he went at Mania, we was like, huh? But it just caught fire. And then I saw within like 3 weeks, and I was telling everyone, my friends and my staff, I said, he's turning face. He was like, no, he's not. I said, you could just watch, you could just feel it. And as time went on, and then, shout out to R-Truth, because it's the vignettes and stuff, the stuff he did, that kind of helped as well. And now he's a face, he's big.
Yeah.
It seems got the time. Speaking of
Mhm.
controversial, who do you feel is the most controversial pro wrestler? You hear this word a lot because you got Punk, you got Drew McIntyre, you had Piper, you got Austin. I mean, back in the day, you had Adrian Adonis. People don't even know that. I give you one even back in the day. My good old buddy, Dr. D. David Schultz. You hear those interviews, fans, look it up. YouTube, Dr. D. David Schultz promo on Jerry the King Lawler. I could say it on my show, but I won't. But he can never say it on TV. Don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Raj. You laugh. I think you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So
the
who do you
wrestlers
feel?
that back then would go,
Yeah.
go places you can't go.
So who do you feel in history, like top two, just most controversial? That word is thrown is so overused. What do you feel is the most controversial in the business?
Yeah, man, that's covering a long time, and a lot of
See,
it's not
first,
good controversial.
that's what I mean. Your controversial is not good. Normally when you
It's-
hear it.
I mean, Piper was, I feel like, good controversial for the most part. There was stuff he did back in the day that he couldn't do today, for sure. And modern day, man, I think Punk's up there. Like he gets people talking, and he people have a strong emotional reaction to him, and that's hard to get. And across the board, whether you like him or you hate him, people talk about him, and that's controversy. And so I definitely put him up there for modern era.
I would agree with you on that. I would. Now, with you being a dog lover, and this is a fan question from my man Mo. With you being a dog lover, did you feel any emotion with Drew grabbing Larry's bracelet at
Yeah, man.
SummerSlam?
Like a lot of people were laughing at that angle, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, that's not
I
funny.
can get like something that might seem silly, but it's a gift to you or something that is important to you. That even though it's not like a Rolex or something, that it's still personal. So I like that angle. A week ago, it seemed like they were just dropping it, which I wasn't a fan of, and then they brought it back. But and I'm fine with them dropping it, but have Punk get it back before you drop it. But yeah, I like that angle.
No, Rob. Do you think the new trope or the new thing to do is going to be inviting dogs or people's wrestlers' personal pets into storylines? We know we've been on about Larry. Larry has now been more so into the mainstream. You had Pharaoh with Cody Rhodes. Back in the day, we had Matilda, the British Bulldogs. Everybody had a pet. Coco Beware had
Yeah.
Frankie, and you had Jake the Snake, and a few other ones I'm forgetting. Ricky the Dragon's Dragon. Do you think that's going to start to become a new thing now with personal pets?
I don't think so, because you're limited to what you can do, and you got to travel those pets around. Like it's not easy, and it's not like you could really do anything to those pets for heat. So I don't see it going much further than where it is now. I see them posting their pictures and stuff on social media a lot more, but as far as actually using it in the storyline, I don't see it happening that much.
What are your thoughts on kayfabe? We all know back in the day how it was with kayfabe. You didn't know who was friends. It was more closed in. Now it's open, especially now with social media, with TikTok and X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Do you feel like it should be more old school, where it's kind of close to the vest, or are you okay with everything being out there? Like, hey, I fought you on Monday Night Raw, but now I'm gonna show you us at Denny's hugging and taking a selfie with a fan.
Yeah, I think there's a happy medium to that. Like I like how, like, it would suck if Punk and Drew, like, if you see pictures of them out at dinner together, or at grabbing food together. So I like that kind of separation, where the people that are in a death feud are not, they're not acting like they really hate each other. I guess they kind of do
Yeah,
still act like they hate each other, but I do like blurring that reality to where you don't know. Like, even when I started talking to a lot of wrestlers in the late 90s with Brett and Sean, they didn't hate each other as much as you thought in like 96. It wasn't until 97, but you can never tell. It just always felt like they just did. And, I just feel like it adds a lot to it when you can't tell. And, I feel like MJF was really good for a while at blurring those lines. Now not as much, but I do like it when they do that. Yeah, when they blur those lines. And and don't overuse social media, and it adds to their mystique and their aura. I feel like Jon Moxley, Roman Reigns, those guys do it great by not constantly posting on Twitter. And
you don't know much about them. You know them, but you don't see them. Oh, but I'm sitting down sipping a cocktail. I'm sitting down watching Scarface, or I'm out here at the beach. They don't post.
Yeah.
And I feel like that makes you even more. And as we know, with the greatest Undertaker, doing that with, of course, before social media, even when social media was there, of keeping kayfabe, the less you know, the better. Because when I see you in person,
Bray Wyatt.
See you. Bray Wyatt, same thing. Even though at times before he passed, he would post very regularly. Shout out to the lady. I'm not sure if you know the fan that was close to Bray that dealt with mental health issues. I'm not sure if you know she passed away. And Bray actually posted a picture of him and her, one of the few pictures he posted. And that's rare for him. Rest in peace to Bray. But as you said, with Bray, with others, you don't. Imagine if it was Twitter in the 80s with the Horsemen and the Road Warriors and Savage and Hogan.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It would have sucked.
It definitely would have. And the people we think hated each other were best friends, and sometimes they legit did. Andre the Giant Warrior, Andre the Giant Iron Sheik, different aspects of that. So, I love your, I love the fact of your answer, because you're not just old school and say, "Oh, well, I wish it was back in my day," and not some new school and say, "Well, times change, get over it." You're kind of in the middle, and that's how it should be.
Yeah,
definitely sure.
Because the one thing as media, and thanks for having me on again, but the one thing that would annoy me as media is when you go to these press conferences or conference calls and they're acting like the match they just saw was real, or they're acting like, "Oh, was that your toughest match ever? What are you going to do for this match coming up?" And, it would just drive me nuts when they do that. So you gotta not be so kayfabe that you're asking stupid questions, but yeah, I like the wrestlers maintaining a bit of it. But I don't like when they're in a press conference or a conference call. Again, it's that fine line where they're acting like the match was real, or you
gotta have a blend. You could. We've been on them where you have some of them, and when we say the boys fans, because I always try to educate, because we don't want to assume everybody listening is a wrestling fan, so they may not understand terms. When we say the boys, it's not just gender specific. The boys, it's a universal term, as in the workers. It's the females too.
Yeah.
When you hear the wrestlers or performers be on these conference calls, the media scrums, whatever you want to call them, these media calls, as you hear, you have some that are like it's real. We're like, dude, it's a work, we know. Then some that's like so wide open. You got to have that balance where you talk against them, but then at the same time, like Cody, you mad at The Rock for slapping you? Dude, it was a work. Cody knew he was going to get slapped. The Rock just randomly mollywopped him. But at the same time, that's how it is. Speaking of which, quick thoughts on The Rock, with him being the final boss, thoughts on his new Ultimate Hill evolution, and where do you see The Rock going forward? Because there's so many layers that could happen, they could do now.
I think there's no one like The Rock. Like when he's on TV, you just gravitate to him. Like he's just so above and beyond. And it's not just wrestler, like in the movie scene, he stands out. And I think, to me, they did that angle with The Rock and Cody the night after Mania. But now, with how over Roman is, to me, I think Roman versus The Rock, that's your WrestleMania match. You do Rock and Cody at SummerSlam. Because now SummerSlam is going to be 2 nights, likely starting next year, definitely the year after. You need to make that basically another
Yeah.
WrestleMania, and to do that, you need a mega main event, and you need Rock in there. So those would be the two matches.
I have to ask you this because you get this, and just being a professional is real quick. What are you drinking? Is that water?
Yeah, that's just water.
I don't see the glass. No, I just took.
And I got my coffee. I got my afternoon coffee and my water.
What kind of coffee do you drink?
Usually just black, just Costco coffee in the morning, and then I put Vital Proteins in my afternoon coffee. I put Vital Proteins, a little Splenda, and some creamer, and it's so you get a little protein, and it's really good.
Yeah, I like that. Black coffee. I don't know how I gotta have cream and sugar when I do drink coffee. That black, nah, I can't do that. Speaking of drinks, we do have a sad question. Ever since your queen, I've seen you, Raj, drink red wine in the past. What red wine do you drink, and what do you prefer?
My favorite is one called Prisoner.
Prisoner?
Yeah. As far as one that's not overly crazy pricey, you could get a bottle for like $40-$50. Because that's probably my favorite, but I like Malbec's Cabs, Pinot Noirs.
Cab.
Yeah.
Do your wife drink wine?
She so now she can't drink red that much anymore. Like having too much red, like she like wakes up in the middle of the night, can't go back to sleep. So she'll drink like Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, like just white wines. I like those too, but red is my pet. Red's a preference.
What's your favorite? Okay. Thoughts on these people very quickly. Bill Apter.
An OG. You know, he's a great guy. Met him several times, and just really, really, really loves the business.
Uncle Dave Meltzer.
Another OG. Just a different kind of OG. He's, you know, the kind of the news that we're used to.
We grew up with,
the non-kayfabe. You know, the like not the kayfabe stuff was the Apter, and then the non-kayfabe was Meltzer. So it's been around a long time and still doing it. So, you know, I'm happy for him.
Brian Alvarez.
I find him entertaining. I think him and Dave kind of have a good thing going.
I have to mention his name because fans keep asking us your thoughts on Sean Ross Sapp.
I consider him, you know, I mean, we don't talk all the time, but you know, he used to work for Wrestling Inc. We used to do the podcast together, and you know, I think even just last year we broke a story together. So, yeah, really happy with what he's done, and how he's been able to grow.
So, all right, Top. What is the worst WrestleMania of all time, and what is the best?
I think 9 is probably the worst. There might be some over the years that I'm forgetting, but again, like those first 20 really stick out to me, and at 9 and 2 were, I thought, really bad. The best, there's ones for different reasons. Like I really like 3, just for that historic aspect. The Hogan Andre thing was like larger than life, a fantasy match. I thought 17. I know people always say that, but I really thought that was up there. And then I thought this last year's WrestleMania Night 2 was up there. Yeah. I thought Night 2 just crushed it, and you had the surprises, the big reactions. I mean, just everything about it. I thought Night 2, and then last year's WrestleMania Night 1 was really up there.
Yeah, you're right, because last year Night 1 was better than Night 2.
Yeah.
And this year Night 2 was better than Night 1.
Yeah.
What about 19? I'm getting a question from Toph, one of my staff members.
What was 19? Was Hogan, Vince?
Hogan and Vince, Brock and Angle, Michaels, Jericho. Gosh, I'm trying to think back. Rock and Austin 3. That was a weird Mania. Some reason that had like a weird. I don't know if it's me, but I always said 19 was like 2. I always said 17 is 1, and 19 and 20 kind of was like two, like could interchange. But 19, I don't know if it's me. 19 always had a weird aura. It just, and now that with us talking to a lot of the boys and people that worked around that
Yeah.
time, why. But even watching it, it just feels weird. Like it just had this weird spirit.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think I agree. It just on paper, it's like, especially now looking at it, it seems like
yeah,
gigantic. But yeah, in execution, it just was missing out. And I felt like Brock, they were really trying to push him as the top babyface, but he wasn't as over as a babyface at that time. For other guys before him, like the Rocks and the Austins, and so I did feel like that also kind of, you know, I don't know, just kind of it wasn't like you had this big emotional investment in Brock winning.
oh yeah, I agree with that. Last two questions. I know you have to go, and I appreciate you doing overtime because I see Lexi in the background. She's waiting for you. And shout out to Mrs. Giri and to your lovely daughters.
Uh-huh. Thanks.
When you think of wrestling moments, and I ask everyone this, I've asked the boys, the girls, everybody. What are the three wrestling moments in your life that you remember as far as emotion that when you saw it to this day you just go back? You have the moments where it's like I gotta go back and watch this to remember how I felt when I saw it as a kid or even as a grown man. What are those
I mean,
moments for you?
and it's weird because they're pretty much all when I was a kid,
Mhm.
and then because of that, it's like a lot of those involve Hogan, Hogan Andre, Hogan turning heel. Like that was a night like that just blew my mind and just blew up, everything about it. And then Savage winning at WrestleMania 4. And again, Hogan ended up being involved, but Savage winning at 4, just everything about it. WrestleMania 4 wasn't one of the greatest, but that moment was just awesome. It's like, and that match with DiBiase, I watched that tons of times.
Uh, and I love the fact you mentioned 4 because very rarely people say WrestleMania 4. First of all, that was a long ass WrestleMania. I just did an article on that.
Mm-hmm.
That thing to this day is like one of the top 5 or 6 longest manias because it was the tournament. And you
It was
notice
on
how,
2 videotapes when you rented it from the
yep, it
store.
was Blockbuster.
Yeah.
I remember that. And
Mm-hmm.
so was WrestleMania 7 because it was the last WrestleMania that had an intermission. So WrestleMania 7 in some markets had 2 tapes because it was long as well.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most disappointing manias, but we'll
Yeah,
talk about
that
that
one
later.
sucked.
But yeah, with Savage winning and the fact that Randy Savage changed his clothes in every match.
Yeah, that was
And
awesome.
I love that. I look at detail like that.
Elizabeth too. Yeah.
Elizabeth too as well. I know for me, of course, Hogan turning heel. I throw one at you as a kid. My grandfather ordered this when I saw the Rumble. When I saw Axe and Smash go against each other
Oh yeah.
as a kid, I was like, "Oh no, they're gonna Hogan and Warrior at the
Yeah.
Rumble when they had the standoff."
Yep. That standoff.
Um,
That was awesome.
Stan coming down the rafters.
Savage and Elizabeth getting back together.
Says Lewis getting back together. Dusty getting traded on by the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
Not only that, when the Horsemen attacked the Dusty,
Yeah.
and I give you one that never was televised. I'm in Baltimore, so Great
Mm.
American Bash was here. I was in ringside at the gate. Got the ring here. We right at the corner.
Mm.
Ric Flair went against, I guess it was the Road Warriors. It was him and Arn. And I remember specifically Ric Flair bumping against my shoulder. And Flair literally said, "Don't fucking touch me. I'm the nature boy." And his blood flew past my face because he had, the Flair blood. I'll never forget that a
Yeah.
day in my life. And the
The
Road
first
Warriors
wrestling
chased me.
event I went to was Baltimore Arena.
Oh man, what was on the card?
It was a WWF house show. It was Hogan Savage, their first rematch in that area. Their first match after WrestleMania 5 in that area. And then they did the rematch a couple months later at the DC Armory.
Okay, well, I do have a book here. I'll text you about later that I'm looking at now that I'll send you the match card to be able to tell you the date and everything. And before you go, what is your Mount Rushmore? And this is the fan questions everybody wants to know. What is your Mount Rushmore of WWE? This includes WWF, WWF, WWE, what is the top? As you feel, what are the top biggest stars in WWE history?
The biggest stars or my favorite
In
stars?
your personal opinion.
So favorite stars.
Favorite, yes.
Okay, favorite stars. I'd say Savage, Piper, Rock, Austin.
Okay. Now, biggest draws.
Biggest draws. It's Hogan, Austin, Rock, and Austin, Rock.
Cena? Would you say?
He's not as a draw because business kind of went down when he was on top.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I almost gotta say
Bruno?
Roman. I mean Bruno if you're going way, way back, but Bruno was again, he was just a territorial thing. It wasn't nationwide and world, like it's
you know what? Now that you say it, you're right. You gotta put Roman. Because Roman helped the business get big.
As far as like seeing the business go on an upward trajectory, those are the four that did it in the time that I've been watching.
Hogan, Rock, Austin, Reigns.
Probably, yeah.
Now,
Piper, Savage, they were all draws too, but they were in a time where it was already hot. They didn't really. Well, Piper and Hogan, kind of made it. So, but yeah.
And the last one for today: who is the biggest wrestling star of all time? I've got a lot of flack for this. Last month we did a poll. Been back and forth. People arguing with me. I'll wait to get my answer. Who is the biggest wrestling star of all time?
I think if you're talking like everything, then it's The Rock.
Yeah. The Rock.
Yeah.
All right.
Mainstream, everyone knows him. I don't even think that's questionable.
So we got The Rock. We also got Hogan. So The Rock.
If you're looking just at wrestling, then I'd say Hogan.
Mainstream media would be The Rock. Mm-hmm. And I would fancy me to have to say because everybody knows The Rock. When The Rock came back, I had people from high school, people was posting stuff. One of my sisters close ain't watched wrestling since '92. Was like, hey bro, I'm gonna watch. I heard The Rock is back. What is he doing? Like, watch wrestling. Ain't watched wrestling since then as we were kids in my dad's house. Yeah. So definitely, so I do agree with you. Well, Raj, thank you much for your time. Before you go, I want to give you opportunity to promote, plug anything that you're affiliated with that's supporting you for charities, organizations, religious organizations, websites, anything that you're doing now or have upcoming.
I do a personal finance newsletter called Practical Money. It's called the URL is practicalmoney.co. I've just been investing for decades, and it's just my personal experiences. What stocks, like the last one, I posted my entire stock portfolio that I have. Once ago, a couple ones before that, I posted my ETF portfolio, which is mostly for dividend income. Just other investing tricks, and not tricks, but and not really advice, just things that I've done over the years that have worked and how it's worked and everything. So practicalmoney.co. And you know what? There's like 10 charities we donate to, and I have a donor advised fund. So I think in an upcoming issue, I will talk about what a donor advised fund is and the charities that we donate to.
That's amazing. Are you still, do you have any, I know you mentioned the podcast that you do with Matt Morgan. So tell us how to watch that or how to listen to that.
So that's Gigantic Pop, youtube.com/Gigantic Pop. Right now, we're doing it every Friday evening, right before SmackDown, an hour before SmackDown. But we're probably going to be changing it to Thursdays just because of our schedules. So, but check it out; it's a lot of fun, and it's grown a lot. And it's almost been a year, and we really appreciate it.
All right, Raj, thank you much for your time. I'm actually Raj to stay on air. Don't hang up just yet. I'm gonna do the outro. Thank you much for your time. This is Under the Mats Radio, August 21st, 2024. We had the great Raj Giri talking about everything he loves, his love for Macho Man Randy Savage, how WrestleMania 4 is really big to him, how WrestleMania 9 is the worst, how he's a dog lover, he doesn't hate cats but doesn't care much for him, and Hulk Hogan's name in the movie was Rip. There was no Rogers, this was Rip by itself.
You didn't have a last name?
This says Rip, IMDb and Google. I just had a couple people look it up. This says Rip. You can look it up too, but that's the only thing.
All right. Okay.
But I'll dig deeper into that. But Raj, thank you so much for your time. This is Under the Mat Radio, exclusive Skype interview with the great Raj Giri. This will be, I'm gonna call this part one because I'm sure we'll have a part two down the line. Thank you much for your time, fans. Love y'all much. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and even on TikTok. Talk to you soon.